Welcome back, everybody, from your virtual networking session. As I said earlier, and some people have signed on since I welcomed everybody before. But for those of you who are new here, my name is Jeff Bennett. I am the co-founder of StartupSac, and this is Startup Happy Hour, a monthly informal community building event where we bring in a veteran founder or entrepreneur to since we've been doing this virtually, basically do an interview with one of us and then do a Q&A from the audience. In pre-COVID times, we used to do this in restaurants where we would basically just have a founder give a brief background and basically just open it up to questions from the audience. We do hope to be able to get back to in-person events sometime in the next couple of months, so stay tuned to Carlsen Center and StartupSac media channels for when that might be. This is a collaboration between StartupSac and the Carlsen Center. StartupSac is a nonprofit that's all about growing the startup community here in the region by educating, informing, and connecting the startup founders and the entrepreneurs in the region with the resources that they need. And with me here tonight is Cameron Loft from the Carlsen Center. So Cameron, why don't you take it away and tell everybody about the Carlsen Center?
Awesome. Well, thank you, Jeff and Laura and StartupSac for the partnership on Startup Happy Hours. I'm excited that we've continued this partnership for over a year now, and looks like we'll be sometime soon transitioning to running these in person. But if you're not familiar with the Carlsen Center, my name's Cameron Law, and I serve as the executive director. I'm joined by one of our team members, Arlene Miranda, who leads our marketing and operations. But we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education and community to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to scale and launch their businesses. And we're really on this mission to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region and realize this broader vision of making Sacramento a premier hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. And we enjoy partnering on events like this to build the future entrepreneurs and share the amazing knowledge and experience that our successful entrepreneurs in the greater Sacramento region have. So appreciate the partnership and all of you being here in the space. So back to you, Jeff.
All right, thanks, Cameron. And back to StartupSac. As I said before, we are a nonprofit and we rely on the generosity of numerous sponsors. So I wanted to give a shout out to them. They are SMUD, Witten Law, Bender Insurance, Stoll Reeves, Weintraub Tobin, Lynette Ventures, Holcomb Law Group, Clifton Larson Allen, and Ernst & Young. And I want to pay a special shout out to our premier sponsor, SMUD, and play this quick 30-second video.
SMUD presents Clean Power City Champions.
I want to live in a clean power city. That's why I drive an electric vehicle.
I want to live in a clean power city because I want to help stop the climate change.
We want to live in a clean power city
because we want our first child to inherit a better world.
Let's create a clean power city.
And join the charge to a cleaner future.
Join the charge.
Learn how you can join the charge with SMUD at cleanpowercity.org.
All right, so thanks again to SMUD for their continued sponsorship and to all our sponsors. And now, for what you've all been waiting for, we have our special guest tonight, Arik Levy, and my co-founder Laura Good is going to interview Arik, and after she's done with the interview, she's going to open it up to questions from you, the audience. So, Laura, Arik, take it away.
All right, let's get a few things taken care of here. So okay. All right, there we go. Oops.
We were two-time in the spotlight there.
Right,
so.
Right. So Arik, welcome to Startup Happy Hour. We're excited to have you here. For those of you who aren't familiar with Arik, he's the CEO of Luxer One and Drop Locker, and he's also the general partner at Luxer One Ventures, which is kind of a new thing. So why don't we start it off, Arik, with you briefly introducing Luxer One and basically your locker business, because it's many different companies, to our audience.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Laura. I'm excited to be here. and I love what you guys are doing for the Sacramento community and entrepreneurship. So super cool, big passion of mine as well. So yeah, I've been a locker entrepreneur for the last, 17, 18 years now. Back in 2005, started my first company in San Francisco called Laundry Locker, which was a company where we deployed lockers in apartment buildings and office buildings, and people drop their dry cleaning off in the locker. We come around, pick it up, service it, and put it back in the locker so that they could pick it up at their convenience. Really an asynchronous transaction, and that's kind of been my life's work for the last almost 20 years now. We have a software company that we spun out of there, and then a more smart lockers for packages, and then most recently a venture fund that I've created to help continue sort of the success in the locker space and help other entrepreneurs looking to solve solutions using lockers.
Awesome. Well, we always like to find out a little bit about your background. When you were a little guy growing up, did you have dreams of becoming an entrepreneur? Was that always part of your story, or did something come up later in life that pushed you that way?
Yeah, I was never, everybody talks about selling, newspapers at school and then having a lemonade stand, all that stuff. I mean, I enjoyed business, went to a business school, Bentley University, but, never really thought about entrepreneurship till kind of after college and started working in the real world. I started my career at General Electric. And then back in 2000 is when I joined my first startup. And that's when I kind of got a taste of the difference between working for a big company and working for a small company. And at that point in time, I really realized that I enjoyed having an impact and being able to do, big things with a small team. And so that was sort of my first introduction to it. Had good and bad experiences there, but learned a lot, and then continued sort of that learning journey for the next 10 years or so until I really found something that I felt was a good idea. And so I told myself, if I ever come up with a good idea, I'll give it a go. And I thought this laundry locker idea was just a great idea. So I was like, I'm gonna give it all here, and that's how I became an entrepreneur, and one of the best decisions I ever made. Continued doing that for a long time, and really kind of loved that accountability and the challenges and being sort of broad knowledge based and kind of learning everything. So yeah.
So you said if you ever had a good idea, you'd start a business. Tell me, how did you come up with the idea for Laundry Locker? What's the origin story?
Yeah, so like I said, I was living in San Francisco. And this was back in about 2000 was a massive crash. I mean, the city was really impacted in 2000, and people left town. I ended up taking a job about an hour and a half away up in Santa Rosa. And so for about 5 years, I was commuting up to Santa Rosa every day. And you can imagine you get to read a lot of books and educate yourself and become smarter. I would actually leave my house about 6 in the morning and go to the gym. Then I'd go to work. I'd get home around 7 o'clock at night, and I could literally never get my dry cleaning done. And so there was actually a dry cleaner in my building, but she was closed. She'd open at 8 in the morning and close at maybe 5 or 6, and I could never get my dry cleaning done. And so I said to her, I said, listen, could I just leave my stuff outside the door, and you'll come pick it up and then just drop it off? But it was, a little bit of a security issue. And so tried some delivery services, and I just came up with this idea. I said, well, if there was a locker, this would be amazing. I just drop my stuff in the locker whenever I want. She'll come pick it up at her convenience, clean it, put it back in the locker. I get home, it's nice and safe and secure. This is a great idea. And so I kind of worked on that for a long time. I gave the company I was working at, I gave them 6 months notice, told them I was going to start my own company, and built the software, built the tech, built the business, went out, started knocking on doors, calling apartments on Craigslist and trying to find the property manager, the property owner, doing that to pitch them on my idea. And that's how Laundry Locker was born.
Yeah. Wow. I love it when you're solving a problem that you had. That's always exciting to me when entrepreneurs are doing that. The story just seems to be more passionate.
Yeah. 100%.
So one thing about Laundry Locker, so there's a software element. There's a hardware element too in buying the lockers. So I'm curious, a lot of startups, they've got a great idea and they're not really sure how to fund that idea. How did you fund the first installation of Laundry Locker?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hardware business, right? So, software, if you're a programmer, you can virtually build it for free. But with Laundry Locker, we needed to buy lockers. And so I saved every penny I had. Once I knew that I was going to start this company, at that time, I was fairly broke. Managed to save about like 25 grand in the first 6 months of that time between I gave notice and I knew I was going to start the company. Used that to buy lockers, rented a U-Haul, found a guy down in like outside of Los Angeles who made the lockers for me. I'd drive a U-Haul down there, pick it up, drive it back, fill up my entire apartment with lockers. I'd put stickers on them. I mean, it was crazy coming to my apartment. What's going on here? And so yeah, and that was the first deployment of lockers, and we got them out there and started getting some traction. And the first money I raised was from a couple of my friends. I was able to like 10 grand out of them. From my dad, I think I borrowed like 20 grand, and I got some tax return money. I sold my car, did whatever it took to scrap together those pennies so I could get some lockers out there.
Yeah, that's awesome. The friends and family money, the you putting your own money at risk. I think that's something that turns investors on as well, that you almost become more investable because you've put yourself out there. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah, 100%. When you've got your own money in it, when you're taking it from close friends and family, that definitely builds some credibility. That being said, I tried to raise money several times for a Laundry Locker. The first round we raised about a year in. I was able to raise it from the guy who was running the laundromat where I was doing my laundry. And I raised some of it from a real estate guy who I was deploying lockers into his apartment buildings. And so, those were some of my early investors. We tried the VC route many times. And it's not an easy to fund business when you've got such a hardware element like we do, and a little bit of an unsexy business. So while as an investor now, definitely, it's important that they do have some skin in the game, and that they make some of those sacrifices, because it's not easy to go out and start a company. I mean, you can do it easy and sort of raise a bunch of money and try to maintain your lifestyle, but that entrepreneur who's willing to go all in is definitely someone who's committed to that business, and they're committed to not trying to fail when times get tough.
Yeah, great advice. So you were a solo founder when you started Laundry Locker, and that can be a really hard position as a founder to be in for a number of reasons. What's your advice? What advice do you have for founders who are in that same position where they don't have a co-founder yet, or maybe they'll never have a co-founder?
Yeah, I mean, when I started my company in 2005, entrepreneurism wasn't really as sexy as it is today. A lot of my friends in San Francisco had, nice cushy corporate jobs at Google and Apple and Facebook, and not Facebook, maybe Facebook, it was not at the time, but so I tried to woo all them with this great laundry idea I had, and told them this was going to be the future. And there wasn't big networks for people. I have a technical background as well, so I mean my degree is in computer information systems. I built software for 15 years before I started my own company, so I didn't need the software side of stuff, where I think people often that's common as a business. Our visionary comes up with the idea, and then your co-founders on the technical side. Fortunately, I had that piece pretty well covered, and I could do the other ones. I think it's really nice to have a co-founder. It's nice to have somebody that you can bounce ideas off of and work together with and carry some of the load. The flip side of that is it's very rare that relationship lasts till the end, right? So in the beginning, it's helpful. In the beginning, the tech person needs everything, and there's no sales, and then the salesperson is everything, and then you need an operations person. So as the business evolves, you need different things, and it kind of throws that balance a little bit out of whack. So while for many, many years, I really wish I had a co-founder, if I look back on the journey doing it myself, it was, I don't have any regrets that I didn't have one.
Okay. So laundry lockers going along pretty well. And then you actually, two companies shoot out of that or develop out of that, Drop Locker and then Luxer One. Can you tell us a little bit about how those came about and maybe also why they're separate companies instead of being three product lines per se in one company?
Yeah, and you actually could define them as three product lines within one company. But what happened is Laundry Locker is a dry cleaning business with lockers, and so our whole concept was, and the economics were like the cost of building a shop and maintaining that rent was going to be a whole lot less, or a whole lot more than just buying lockers and deploying lockers. In essence, not really paying any rent, but more paying delivery drivers to go out there and do that. And the economics did work. I mean, the business was doing okay, but the dry clean, I mean, we were doing $3 million a year at Laundry Locker, and we were one of the top 1% dry cleaners in the country. It's a very mom and pop industry. It's a difficult business to make money in. You can make some money, but it was never going to scale to the level of something that was going to give our investors a good return. And so what happened was we started, once the company started getting some traction and we had it figured out and knew how to, the operations, the sales, the marketing side of things, we went to franchise the company. And that's when we raised a round of funding. I think it was like around $1 million round to go out and franchise the company. And while I was going through the franchise process, actually concurrently to that, we got approached by a private equity firm to buy the company. That deal fell apart. And then sort of going through that process, we realized we didn't want to be a franchise. Once you're in the franchise business, it's no longer about being a dry cleaner or a locker-based delivery company. It's about being a franchisor, and your job is just to sell franchises. And so the other thing was a lot of dry cleaners were really interested in what we're doing. I mean, we got a lot of attention in the industry. We were one of the first people to really disrupt that industry in a very long time. And so people were very interested in what we were doing, a lot of them being dry cleaners, but they had a brand that they'd invest a lot of time and money in, and they didn't want to become a laundry locker. And so instead what we did was we became, we just took the software that we built, which was sort of part of the franchise model, and we started licensing that software out to anybody who wanted to do it. So anybody who wanted to use lockers to do laundry would use our software, the IP we had, some patents we had around the product and the way we did things. And so it gave us some good protections, really kind of be the leader and kind of the only player in the space. And so in most cases, if you're in any market outside of, anywhere, we've got about 75 different customers around the world who use our software. In fact, I was in Vegas this weekend and talking to someone, they're like, "Oh, I have these lockers right across the street for dry cleaning." I'm like, "Yeah, they're running our software." So that software company spun out of Laundry Locker. That did really well. That was a much more successful business. It's more a business that's a lot easier to scale. You don't have drivers, you don't have locations, you're building software and supporting your customers. And that was a lot of fun. Drop Locker did really well. But during that time, what happened is we started to scale that product and now had a team of people out there all across the country, in essence, selling lockers into apartment buildings for dry cleaning. So the bells started going off and the ringing in the ear from all of our customers and our customers in San Francisco saying, "Hey, we've got a real package problem here." These apartment buildings where we were deploying lockers for people to be able to drop off dry cleaning and wash and fold. We're saying, "Cool, we like your lockers for dry cleaning and wash and fold, but can you help us with the packages?" And when we started Laundry Locker, buildings were getting a couple packages a day. Amazon was nothing like it is today. But pretty quickly, you saw that start to scale. So about 2013, 14 is when it really just started taking off. And these buildings that are getting 5 or 10 packages a day are getting 50, 100 packages. And so it used to be the front desk person would take a package, "Hey, Laura, you've got a package to pick up down at the concierge." She'd come pick it up, a day or two. When that becomes 100, 200 packages, it becomes unmanageable. And so that's how Luxer One was born. People came to us and said, "Can we use our lockers for dry cleaning?" And so we launched or can we use our lockers for packages? And so that's how Luxer One was born, was to solve that need that we were just kind of hearing from our customers over and over. And so we sort of put the brakes on Drop Locker and went to focus on this side of the business where we saw exciting opportunity. And, it's the same investors through all of it. It's all the same C Corp, but different brands. So we fit in their completely different businesses and different business models and different management teams. We didn't keep it under one. It is under Laundry Locker Inc. as a corporate umbrella, but they're three very different businesses.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And I like how you said you're doing the laundry lockers and people are asking you, can we use these for something else? Basically, your customer feedback. And I listened to an interview that you did where you said feedback is a gift. And we often encourage early stage startups, even before they have a product, to be talking to the people who might be their customers to get that feedback to be part of design. So I'm wondering, it sounds like you think feedback is important. How early in the process of developing your companies did you get customer feedback, and would you have gotten it earlier knowing what you know today?
Yeah, the easiest way to get customer feedback is sort of through the sales process and when you're starting to sell things, right? So, if people are going to buy it or not going to buy it, that's one of the best ways to get customer feedback. So I remember before I even, we were building the software for Laundry Locker, I came up with the name, and I was literally just walking around San Francisco, knocking on doors and talking to property managers. And there was a property manager standing outside. And I think I probably left a flyer on the building or something. And I started talking to her, and she's like, wash and fold, like, that's interesting, because that was our concept initially, was to be just a wash and fold service. That's why it's called Laundry Locker, very descriptive name. And she said, well, laundry is interesting, but you really need to do dry cleaning. And so it actually turned out dry cleaning became about 70% of our business. It's a higher margin business. And there's kind of an established business around that. So, that was one of the first pieces of feedback we got. The other great way to get feedback is use the service yourself, have your employees use the service. It's a great way to kind of stay that quality control, right? So can you live in a building that has Luxer One in it or a laundry locker? And so, I was always a customer for many years. And then we got feedback from our partners as well. The other thing about feedback is you've got to have a good sense to know, is it helpful or not, right? And it's very easy to go down tangents, especially as an entrepreneur. We've all got ADD and always looking for the next shiny object. So you're working on your business. Oh, wait, there's something better. Let me jump to that, or something better, jump to that. So you got to stay focused, and you've got to, stay in your lane, but also realize when the market's changing or there's a good opportunity out there or a way that you can pivot and shift your business to take advantage of something. So, when we were out there knocking on doors for laundry lockers, that's when everybody was telling us we needed to be in the package locker game. And there was actually some other players that were starting to come up in that space, but we really had the right to win there and move very quickly to launch a product there so that we didn't lose, the market share and the market that we had developed for locker-based delivery.
Yeah. Okay. So let's switch gears a little bit and talk about product innovation. And how often are you guys innovating? What is package lockers? Just you create them and you're done, or what kind of innovation? How important is innovation to continued product success for you?
Yeah, it's a big part of my DNA. I think in the industry, we are considered, especially in the Luxer One industry, to be the innovative solution. We're always coming up with new ideas, ways to make things better. Always looking at, what are our top customer service complaints? What are the top technical issues we're having, and using those as a great place to start focusing our incremental innovation, right? So you need incremental innovation to make your product better and stay relevant. But then you also need to be looking at, how can my product be disrupted tomorrow? How can my company go out of business? And I think as an entrepreneur, for many years, I couldn't sleep at night thinking about, how is this thing going to fail? Is it going to be an operational issue, a pricing issue, a market change, et cetera? So we're always looking to disrupt our company, figure out what the next product's going to be, and then figuring out a way to solve that. The bigger you get, you'd think it's easier and you have bigger resources. But we found that it becomes very difficult. Luxer One, In essence, there's a new product we're launching that we think is probably going to disrupt our industry. And, the only way we could build that was pretty much to build a whole new team. So we've got a whole new team that we spun off. In fact, that's my primary role is focusing on that. That company is called Harbor. It's sort of our next innovation of lockers. Because our company right now is focused, we've got 200 employees. We're focused on servicing our customers, continuing to sell our lockers, grow that business. It's a fantastic business. But you always got to be looking over your shoulder. And ideally, it's us that comes up with the next product innovation, not one of our competitors.
Yeah. And did any new innovations come about out of the specific problems caused by the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things happened during the pandemic. So one is, some of our markets changed. So we were starting to get a lot of traction in office buildings, and clearly that kind of fell by the wayside. But what picked up was libraries. So libraries was an area we hadn't seen. They were trying to figure out how they service their customers, so it became a whole great market for us. Municipalities were trying to figure out how can they have contact with solutions. And so lockers are really in the crosshairs of contact with solutions, and it's been really successful for us, and I think we'll continue to see that. We also saw companies come out that came at our problem a different way, right? So a lot of our business is putting lockers in apartment buildings for packages. Well, that package volume was growing, things were getting crazy, and everybody was home now, right? So it's a little bit of a different dynamic. Our product worked really well when everybody was at the office all day and they'd come home at 6, 7, 10 o'clock at night and be able to pick up their package. But you can imagine if everybody's home at day all the time, it makes a lot easier to schedule delivery. One of the interesting things we saw is there was a competitor came out swinging, did really well during the pandemic because everybody was home. Now, as people are starting to get back out, go back into the office, go to nightlife, go out with their friends, take weekend trips and such, they're really struggling because people aren't there to accept the packages. So it's much more of a scheduled delivery model, whereas ours is much more of an asynchronous transaction. And so we're starting to see that pendulum swing back. So, you always got to be able to adapt. We, pretty quickly, we had a team of over 150 call center people, and overnight we were able to make them all work from home and start taking all the phone calls there and such. So, COVID threw a lot of challenges our way. We didn't, but fortunately for us, package volume just increased and increased and increased and made the problem worse and worse and worse for even some of the smaller buildings, which create a lot of opportunities for us. So it's been an interesting time to be able to adapt and change our business. And we've been fortunate enough to be able to capitalize on what COVID's done for us.
Yeah. I know I ordered a lot more packages. And then I was a spoiled Amazon Prime customer as well. And suddenly when I couldn't get my stuff in 1 or 2 days, I'm like, what is this world coming to?
Yeah, right. Take a week, what you take a day or two, you're like, what's going on here?
Exactly. So a little shift again. Your background is as a software engineer, and some of the struggles that I hear from tech founders is the transition from dreaming of and building your idea to becoming the CEO of the company. And I wondered, how was that transition for you, and what kind of advice might you have for a technical founder on how they can develop the skills they need to be the CEO, or how they can fill out their staff to help them with that?
Yeah. So I started Laundry Locker when I was about 30 years old. Started my career I went to a business school, so it was a very well-rounded degree in finance, marketing, operations, and technology. And I started my career at General Electric through one of their management leadership programs. So I had a lot of leadership development and training, which really helped me as well as a, I call it kind of like a technical business degree. And so then, I had experience at General Electric. I had experience at a startup company. I had experience at a mid-sized company where I was VP of operations. So fortunately for me, by the time I was 30, I had a very well-rounded education and experience set. that I felt, that's why I kind of was telling you, the thing that was running in my mind is just, if I ever have a good idea, I'm going to give this a go. And for me, a lot of it was just, testing myself and validating it to myself that I was good. When you're working at a big company or even a mid-sized company, like, how good are you? You can't tell if you're good until you actually go out and run your own company. And then, the other thing for me is it took about, Luxer One was the first company that scaled. I mean, Laundry Locker was scaling, but it was scaling over 5-6 years. And so, you're always learning a new part of the business. Initially, we just started with drivers. Then we started opening a dry cleaning shop where we had, to learn all the operations of dry cleaning. And then, our software got a lot more sophisticated and we started licensing that out. So swung to that. And we had to build up a sales team that was different than Laundry Locker, was more like B2C marketing. And then Drop Locker was more business to business sales. And so, I'm a very hands-on leader, very hands-on entrepreneur. I mean, there's pretty much nothing in any of my companies that I haven't done and wouldn't do myself. I mean, I learned everything about pressing clothes and doing wash and fold to repairing the machinery and the equipment. When your machines go down, you got to get them working because you're going to lose production. And if you try to bring in a third party, it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to cost you a ton of money. So, you learn how all this equipment works, learn how to fix it all. Like I said, I'm a roll up my sleeves, get everything done kind of guy. And so, I think having that really well-rounded background, just being willing to roll up your sleeves and figure anything out is sort of the way I do things. Now, not every entrepreneur does them that way, but I enjoy that. And that's sort of what I'd like to get in the weeds on. Mm-hmm. And so, that was great. But as you start to scale your business, as Laundry Locker or Luxer One was scaling incredibly fast. We did like $1 million in sales the first year, I think $6 million the next one, $18 million the next one, $35 million in like 4 years. And so with that kind of rapid growth and scaling, I mean, that was something I was not prepared for, didn't know how to do. I found a system called EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, and we implemented that. I don't think I could have run my company without it. I'm an entrepreneurs organization, and the peer group I have there has been one of the most instrumental pieces of my growth, and just having a great set of resources to bounce ideas off of and to work with and to just see the things that they're doing right and the things that they're doing wrong and the learnings that they have now becoming my learning. Those are some of the things that I think have made me a successful CEO, from, being the guy that was out there in my car picking up the dry cleaning myself at a one-man show to being the CEO of a $40 million company with, 250 employees.
Yeah. Thinking back to those early days, what did you do for your accounting? Was it a piece of ledger paper or a spreadsheet, or did you actually go to something like QuickBooks right away?
Yeah, I think, what I first used was Microsoft Money, and I actually really liked it. And then I went to the accountant and I'm like, yeah, it's on Microsoft Money. Here they are. My books are clean. Every transaction's in there. I've reconciled my bank account. And he said, you need to move to QuickBooks. And I searched for about 10 different accountants because I did not want to move to QuickBooks. And I realized that the accounting industry and QuickBooks were very well embedded together. So I really had no choice except QuickBooks. And so I think when you're a small company, until you're doing your own taxes or you've got a CFO or something like that, we were on QuickBooks for a very long time trying to make that product work for us.
Yeah. Now you're probably on an enterprise solution, or are you still on EOS? Or
yeah, so EOS is it's more of a way of running your business.
Oh, okay.
So it's based on a book called Traction. Everybody in my EO group is running it. Anytime you're scaling a business and trying to hold people accountable and move things forward and build a strategy, it's a really powerful tool. So we still run EOS, but that is it's not really like a software. It's not an ERP or anything like that. We use Zoho pretty much as our ERP at Luxer One. I've been a huge fan of that. I mean, their product is just incredibly diverse. And our finance runs on Odoo, actually, which was it's an ERP system that we started to implement and then moved to Zoho, but we never moved our finance team off of Odoo, so they're still using that for now.
That's always fun. Another question about EOS, like at what point in a startup's life would it make sense for them to implement something like EOS? I just started to hear about it recently.
Yeah, so you might have heard of scaling up as well, and gazelles. And these are a bunch of frameworks of how to run a growing business. Typically, there's different parts of these that work at different stages in the life cycle. I mean, when we started to implement it was just as we started to build the executive team. Mm-hmm. So once I had managers who were managing managers is when it really became valuable and important as a full system. Through EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, here in Sacramento, we launched an Accelerator about 6 months ago. And that's for businesses that are doing between $250,000 and $1 million. And it's really for us to help them scale their business. That's built on top of EOS and scaling up. So it uses certain pieces. So, core values. Every company should have core values, the kind of thing you should be thinking about when you just get started. Unique value position, an accountability chart. So there's a bunch of tools that are in there that are really helpful. As far as running it within your organization, it's helpful if you have managers who have managers under them before you start actually implementing something like that. But even as with Luxer One Ventures, when I started that, it was actually, I was mentoring in the Accelerator, and I started running it through EOS and scaling it up and the tools that are in there. And it was incredibly helpful in figuring out my brand promise, my core values, who we were going to market to, some of our KPIs, setting rocks for quarters, goals for the next few years. So it's been you can use it anytime. But it is it's a book you can read and try to self-implement it, or you can join an accelerator or something that's running that. Or, for us, we were at a scale large enough where we brought in someone to actually be the implementer. And we meet with them, every quarter, where they were coaching and working with our management team to really help us implement this and roll it out throughout our company.
And the book was called Traction. Did you say that?
Traction. Yeah, Traction is the main book. There's another small book called What the Heck is EOS? But Traction is the book that was built off. Very easy read. And if you're running a business, one or two people, I would strongly recommend just buying that book and reading it. For me, it was sort of life-changing of oh, okay, now I finally have just a textbook on how to run my business and a step-by-step, do A, B, C, D. This is how you grow your business. It's kind of like scaling for dummies. It's a pretty cool process, and you've got to be committed to it, make it work. But for me, it was definitely one of the most important things as we were going through that incredibly fast scaling and growth of the company.
Yeah. Cameron's posted some links in the chat for our audience members if they want to go check that book out. So thank you for that. That was really interesting information. So question for you about patents. You have, I think, at least 8 patents. I saw 5 on your LinkedIn, and then I'm like, oh, let me go Google this. I found 8 on some patent site. How important were patents to the success of your company? And have you ever had to defend a patent?
Yeah, so I don't think patents were the key to our success. They didn't help in the success of our company. But once our company became successful, those patents became incredibly important. So as with Laundry Locker, we were able to build a lot of space between us and the other software companies in the industry, because our patents were, we invented the space. Nobody was doing locker-based delivery for dry cleaning. And, depending on how you write your patents and who your patent attorney is, you're trying to close all the holes, and it's kind of a little game of cat and mouse once you start getting into it. So if you see somebody with an innovative idea and then they have patents, you can either kind of veer away from that business, try to do something else, or maybe figure out ways to get around those patents, or you can try to license them. So, after about 15 years of us moving forward with lockers for dry cleaning, most of the major players in the market came out and started knocking us off. And so we have defended those, we have pursued them, we have signed licensing agreements with them on those patents. It's been very helpful for us when we're a software company. Like, we were working with a major Fortune 10 company who was using our lockers and starting to roll them out. They said, like, listen, we don't want to be using your software. We need something that integrates into our ERP. We want to build it ourselves. And we were able to license them our patent as a way of sort of making some money on that. So, you know, the value of the patent actually comes from, in most times, you building a business. If you just come up with a patent and you don't build a business around it, you know, there's trolls out there and there's ways you can try to make money on that. But I find them more of a successful tool of, you know, here's what we're doing. It's unique. It's innovative. Let's patent it, and then it'll become a core feature or a core way that we run our business, and you know, dissuade our customers from doing the same thing. At Luxer One, we've got some great patents, and they are how we separate ourselves from our competition, because we have some functionality they don't have, and if they tried to put it in their product, we would aggressively go after them. So it's been a good part of our strategy, but not like a big part of our strategy. And I thought it was also kind of cool to have some patents to my name. So that was fun. And then what happens with patents, I think I probably have like 4 or 5 core patents, and then you have continuations on them, and those get a different patent number. So it'll look like there's, you know, 8 or 9 patents when there's really 4 or 5 of them.
Right, cool. So I've heard people say sometimes that patents can increase the value of your business when you're looking to exit or when someone's looking to buy you. And in December of 2018, Luxer One was acquired by another company. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and also tell us a little bit about how that transition was for you? Was it a smooth transition? Any lessons learned about how things change when you sell your business to another company?
Yeah, so what happened is, I mean, I kind of gave you the numbers for how we were scaling Luxer One, and we did that without any money. In fact, Luxer One was started by, we took $250,000 from Laundry Locker and sort of put that in a fund and kind of created sort of a separate team to go build Luxer One. And we paid that money back in like 6 months and never brought on any other funding. So we were able to scale, you know, at hyper growth without bringing on any funding. And so if you look at why and how we were able to sell our company for the valuation we did, it's because it's rare to see a company scale at that volume from $1 million to, you know, almost $40 million in 4 years without bringing on any outside capital. But what happened actually is about 4 years in, we landed Home Depot. And when we landed the Home Depot deal, the way we're actually able to make that business work and scale that fast, especially as a hardware company, was that when the customer would sign a deal, they would pay 50% up front. That 50% allowed us to buy the lockers, which we were on like 30-day terms with our customers. And just by keeping that flow going and growing, we were able to use that cash to fund the purchase of the lockers. And then we would do the installs, and that cash would help us continue to fund our operations. So it was a really nice business model until you land a big corporate customer who's going to pay you, you know, net 90, and you've got all kinds of contract things that you need to hold on to, you know, that you need to buy to, otherwise they're going to pull the lockers or cancel the contract. And so when we started getting those POs, we knew there was no way we were going to be able to fund that. So at that point in time, we felt like it might be a good time again for like the 4th or 5th time for me to go out and try to raise some institutional money. And it was just kind of happenstance. A customer emailed me and said, hey, you know, I'm an investment banker. Are you looking to sell your business? Would you be interested in talking to us? And, you know, you get a lot of those emails here and there, a lot of people fishing around, but it was a customer. So I felt like I had to reply to him. I was like, you know, I had a phone conversation with him, said, we're looking to raise money, not sell the company. He's like, oh, we can help you with that. And so we met with these investment bankers from PwC, came out and worked with us to actually help us raise money. And through that process, they also shopped the company to be sold. So that was an incredible process. I was so happy to have the bankers there. I mean, they put together the the presentation, they line up all the meetings, and they do all the work that's just incredibly time consuming and tough. It's really tough to run the structured process. And we go down to Sand Hill Road and have 3 meetings in a day with partners from top firms. Typically you're meeting with associates. It's a much more difficult process. So having the bankers there, having a great track record got us, those meetings. They also got us 5 offers to sell the company. We whittled that down to 3 and then down to 2 that we took through due diligence. And it came down to 2. One of them was a company that was really kind of built of acquisitions, and their process and the way that they handle acquisitions very sort of hands off. So it's like, oh, we bought your company, we love your company, we love what you're doing and your revenue and your business model. Just keep doing that. The other company is like, hey, we're going to integrate you into what we're doing. We've got lockers in other countries. We're going to bring those together and kind of scale this business up that way. And so both offers were pretty much around the same money, slightly different terms. But we went with the one where it's going to allow us to continue to run the company and continue with our mission. Like I said, we were not trying to sell the company when we sold it. And so, we're still in the early phases of the evolution of lockers as I see it. And so yeah, we did that deal. We were purchased by a company called Assa Abloy out of Sweden. They own Yale and August and HID, a lot of different products in the access control and lock space. And so it was a great sort of addition to their portfolio. But like I said, they've been very hands off. So we still run the company. No way from corporates come in and impacted the decisions. We still build the strategy. But now we've got access to a nice big bank account. The ability to continue to run and scale our business. We have a lot of operational efficiencies by leveraging some of their platforms to reduce our costs and such. So it's been a fantastic partnership. We 100% made the right decision. The other company we were looking at went and bought one of our largest competitors several weeks after our deal, and that company's very different than it was pre-acquisition. Whereas I think we are very similar to what we were pre-acquisition.
That's good to hear. I want to touch on a little bit. You've mentioned a few times, you had drop locker and laundry locker, and when you went to do Luxer One, you created a whole new team to go do that. So you've continually adapted to changing markets and opportunities, and that sounds a little bit like your secret sauce to being nimble and adaptable to challenges and opportunities. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think at Luxer One and what we're doing right now with Harbor is a great example of that. I mean, we have a massive development team. We have millions of transactions that are happening in our lockers on a monthly basis. We have a large customer service team. Those operations can't fail. Our systems can't be down for, if our systems are down for 5 minutes, that'll be several thousand missed deliveries and several thousand phone calls to customer service. And so if you try to take a team that's doing that and doing incredible work scaling and growing and maintaining your business and say, I want you guys to go build a new product, they get all excited about that. But we've also built, with Scrum and Agile and different methodologies to make our team effective in doing what they're doing. That's not the same team that can go build a new software product. Like for me to build a new software product, I want 1 or 2 full stack devs. I want to be in there, doing the data modeling and designing the screens with our designer. And so, for me, it takes a small team of, we took 2 of our top developers, hired another one, brought in this incredible entrepreneur, actually. So we found a guy who had been an entrepreneur to actually run Harbor for me. And so, he sort of has the best of both worlds. He's working on a new company, but he doesn't have all the risk and personal assets at stake of kind of starting his own company. And so I say, entrepreneurship for many people is kind of a young person's game, right? No kids, no family. You can work 80 hours a week. You can get in there and grind it out. And this guy had tried that 5-6 times, but never was able to do it. Now he works for a company. We've got a great program in place for him, and he leads our team of like 4 or 5 people that are growing this company and scaling it. And it is completely separate from Luxer One. It's got the resources behind it. And once it starts to gain traction, then we'll start to leverage our manufacturing and our customer service and our marketing and our operations and our logistics. But right now, we don't want to tie them down with that. Like, you need to get a locker to LA, like, just do it. I don't know, throw it in the back of your truck, call a shipping company, do whatever you need. This is a startup, and we just tell these guys over and over, it's a startup. If I told Luxer One to get a locker to LA, it's got to go through our, logistics team, which has to work with our 3PL, and then, it's just a much more difficult process that's built for scale, not for deploying one locker into a market tomorrow.
Yeah. Well, that sounds like you did that a really smart way. Other companies, VSP did that. They had something called the shop, and that was like their innovative circle, place that was completely separate from everything else. I think you need to do that. What do they call that? Intrapreneurship instead of entrepreneurship.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we posted the job as an entrepreneur, and actually for us, the key to the success of this has been that entrepreneur. I was going to do it. Like, I love the 0 to 10. The 10 to 100 is not as exciting for me. I mean, that's scaling a business. I like building a business, getting out there, fixing things, rolling it out, changing things quickly, working with a small, nimble team. Once it starts scaling and getting, substantial, like, that's more of a job for a professional CEO. And there's people who are great at that mid-management scaling, and I can figure out and do it, but I love sort of the 0 to 1 and getting things going. So unfortunately, I had sold my business. I have kids. I wasn't willing to put in the 80 hours a week that it needs to kind of make that work. And I was at a point in my life where I didn't have to. But we went out and posted for an entrepreneur and found this guy who's just an amazing entrepreneur who, based on his lifestyle and where he was at his life, this was a much better fit for him than going out and trying to do something again on his own. And, it is really nice as an entrepreneur to have resources, right? To not be worried about money, because that's probably the biggest thing, in those first 10 years of running my business that, until the day we sold the company, I'm checking the bank account 3-4 times a day. And, that is not fun and not healthy for your lifestyle. But necessary when every penny matters. And so it's really nice to be able to operate in an organization where you've got the support and you're not spending your time worried about money and you're worried about building a business. And so I think it's really fun what we've built with this new startup within Luxer One.
Well, I have a couple more questions before we open it up to our audience. So audience, be thinking about those questions. You'll have an opportunity to raise your Zoom hand or let us know in the chat that you'd like to ask a question. So one of my final questions, Arik, is you started this company in San Francisco, but now you're based in Sacramento. How long have you been in Sacramento? How did that come about? And what do you think about Sacramento as a place for an entrepreneur to scale a business?
Yeah, so I was living in San Francisco, kind of right around the time that Luxer One was being born, and I was realizing that if I was going to build this business, it was not the kind of business I could build in San Francisco. I mean, my developers were spending half their day on calls from headhunters. They were just getting picked off. It was really hard to keep them around, to compensate them what we needed to do. We knew that if this business scaled, we needed manufacturing, we needed customer service, we needed space, things that are really expensive and difficult to do in a city like San Francisco. I credit San Francisco. Like I always say, if I didn't live in San Francisco, I wouldn't have been an entrepreneur. I wouldn't have started my own company. I mean, it's just an ecosystem that is incredible and supportive of entrepreneurism, and that ecosystem and that drive and people just come to San Francisco to start businesses. So it was definitely the impetus for what I needed to do. But once I knew I needed to scale something, it was not the right place to do that. And so I was looking at leaving San Francisco. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she's from the Sacramento area, said, why don't we go check out Sacramento? I wasn't particularly excited to do that, but gave it a try. And we got a hotel downtown and went to some of the bars and had a great time, and did some house shopping and realized I could buy a nice house in some of the nicest parts of town for the same price I could buy a 1-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. And so put a couple offers on a house, purchased one, and moved up here in 2015. And I really fell in love with the community. I got pretty embedded in entrepreneurship here through EO is probably my main network, and just being surrounded by fantastic entrepreneurs. Big into investing in the space from a money perspective and a time perspective, and trying to grow entrepreneurism here. We have some great entrepreneurs in the area. We have great ecosystem that's hungry and willing and wanting to support them. When I was in San Francisco, a lot of people I'd meet were from the Sacramento area. So a lot of the great entrepreneurs I work with here grew up in the area, maybe went to other places, and then kind of came back through Sacramento. And I think, I love what StartupSac is doing in the Carlsen Center and Growth Factory and the EO Accelerator. All really great tools to fuel entrepreneurship in this town. And I think we're starting to get there, especially now that people can work remote. Sacramento's kind of a great place. For me, in fact, Sacramento's perfect because I still had a business in San Francisco, and I needed to be able to get there in case anything ever went wrong. And so it was an hour and a half to San Francisco and the ecosystem there, but still far enough away that I could build a business that needed to scale and needed real estate and employees and the like.
Yeah. And an hour and a half's not bad. I lived in the Bay Area for a lot of years. And if you're going from Santa Clara to San Francisco, it's probably going to take you that long exactly. To get there, the same as from Sacramento. Plus we've got the train if you want to work while you go.
Yeah.
Okay. So you talked about investing in companies here. I happen to know that you're now a member of the Sacramento Angels, but you also launched Luxer One Ventures recently. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you're hoping to do there?
Yeah. So, I sold my company. I started investing in some other companies. So I tell every entrepreneur, if you ever want to raise money, just find somebody who sold a company in the last 3 or 6 months. They're usually pretty eager to get some money deployed and start investing in other entrepreneurs, and think they can help them do the same thing. Had some success there. Realized I didn't really like at the time angel investing, and one of the things I didn't like about it was that I was investing in good entrepreneurs. Everybody says invest in good entrepreneurs, and I did. I made some great bets into some great companies. But I didn't feel like I could really move the needle for these guys. I could give them some coaching and experience shares from being an entrepreneur, but I couldn't really help them move the needle because I wasn't in their industry. And then what happened was I started working with some entrepreneurs in the locker space, and a couple of the companies we're looking at are starting to deploy lockers. I said, hey guys, why don't we work together? I can introduce you to Luxer One. I can get you on the Luxer One network. I've got one guy deployed 10 lockers who's doing $100,000. Well, now overnight, we're going to put him in the 5,000 locker locations and scale his business. So I realized that for me, I could have a real direct impact. I could have a 10x valuation increase by investing in companies in an industry that I knew how it worked. I knew the problems they were having. I've solved a lot of those problems myself. I could open them up to large networks, really help them scale and grow their business, know the challenges with fundraising. So this has been a ton of fun for me because I feel like the companies I'm investing in have real impact. For me as an investor, I've got a real impact. I sit on the board of most of these companies. It's kind of a micro VC fund. It's about $10 million. And we're investing in companies in the locker space to really try to propel the industry. Not only try to propel the industry, but the industry is also propelling, and being someone that's, considered one of the innovators in locker-based delivery, asynchronous type delivery. I know you're going to see this market explode. It's exploded in other countries and hasn't taken off in the US for a bunch of different reasons. And I think having a fund that's just focused on entrepreneurs in that space becomes a real multiplying effect. and then bringing them together in their own network. It's really powerful. So I'm having a lot of fun with this and seeing fantastic results from the companies we're investing in.
Yeah. I can see your passion there. So you're the kind of investor who it's not just about return, it's about the journey along the way, and you having an impact on what happens at that company. So
yeah, there's nothing more rewarding than, someone coming back to you and saying, hey, when you said this one or two things to me, if it changed the trajectory of my company or of my life. And I look back on my career and see some of those, and those are probably the highlights of my career, and continuing to do that is incredibly rewarding.
all right. Well, we're going to go ahead and open it up to our audience for questions now. And let's see if you'd like to ask Arik a question, you can raise your Zoom hand, which if you're not sure, if you go to the reactions tab or icon at the bottom of your screen, there's an opportunity to raise your hand. If you're not sure how to do that, you can just let us know in the chat that you have a question, or if you want us to ask your question, you can type your question in the chat. But it looks like Brad has a question for you. And yeah, so, we got
great to meet you. Thanks for coming in. Appreciated the time in the chat. That was awesome. Question for you. I feel like I run into this with other entrepreneurs where things start to get some traction, you get rolling. Was there ever a time in your business where you underestimated the potential of the business or the growth, or you made a decision where you're like, we don't need 5 of those, we're never going to max out capacity on something, and then you blew right by it by accident?
Yeah, I don't think we did not see the potential in Luxer One in the package locker space. That market just took off incredibly fast. It was a lot of fun. It was crazy growth, and I was just trying to figure out how to keep the wheels on that thing while we were driving down the racetrack. Like I mentioned EOS, and I saw some stuff in the chat there around that. that was one of the tools that helped me build that. You run into now with like supply chain issues, and so how do you build the right stock of the right thing and not get stuck? We brought all our manufacturing to the U.S. about 5 years ago, and now a lot of it's luck. A lot of entrepreneurism is luck. It's making educated decisions, weighing the pros and cons of different things. But that U.S. manufacturing right now is like, we're winning so much business from our competitors because they don't have product. And so, it's definitely, when your company's scaling fast, it's important to quickly move from being that entrepreneur who rolls up his sleeves and does everything himself to starting to surround yourself with good people. And sometimes they're not even that great, but they're better than you trying to do it yourself. And you just work with them and coach them, or find different people from different stages in the business. A lot of people can't continue to grow and scale with the company because you need a different sales team for a $1 million company than you need for a $10 million company, and that's different than a $50 million company. So you got to be able to realize that and evolve, and either people evolve with you, or you need to find new folks that can solve the problems you're having at that time. Thanks, Brad.
All right, next question, Sama.
You're muted, Sama.
You're not muted on Zoom, but we can't hear you.
Oh, yeah, we can't hear you. Your microphone level might be too low. If you'd like, you could type your question into chat, and we can ask it for you too. Sounds like she'll do that.
While she's doing that, let's go to Raja.
Yeah, hi, Arik. This is Raja. Thanks for sharing your journey. Wanted to ask you, when you grew your company, was it mostly organic with people that you hired? Like you said, you hired a great team and you got the right people. Was it? Did you have to do a lot of collaboration with partners outside? How did you pick those partners? Were they national, international? Was it a combination of organic and acquisitions? So if you can just throw some light on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty much all organic growth. what was really cool is because I was at this for like 17 years, and so the first 10 years at Laundry Locker we were scaling that, and a lot of it's relationships, networking. You find good people through there. I had started to build up a little bit of a bench of quality entrepreneurs. I had a couple CEOs who had run Laundry Locker. One of them runs Drop Locker now. The other guy actually went off to become a restaurant entrepreneur, and then he came back and was running sales over at Luxer One. So a lot of these folks have sort of gone out there and come back, which has been a lot of fun. One of the best things I did when we were hiring and needed to hire fast, especially in Sacramento where I didn't know people and didn't have a great market, we hired a recruiter, and we were paying arm and leg, but we just needed people as fast as we could get them, and that was the fastest, easiest way to get folks, which is, people is probably the hardest thing to scale. Manufacturing can be challenging, but there's third parties you're leveraging for that. So, but you need good people internally and trying to scale them, train them, coach them, kind of get them aligned with your company where it's going. That was some of the harder pieces to scale during that organic growth. And that's where acquisitions can be good, but acquisitions can also be very risky in that if you lose some of your key people there, or if they don't mesh with you from a values perspective, it can be a challenge. So, yeah, hopefully that answers your question. Thanks, Roger.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right. So Sama's question is, you talked about team building and using methodologies like Agile, Scrum, etc. What are the issues that you had or are still facing that these methodologies did not solve?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we still use some of these, and they're fantastic, especially as we grow our company and scale it. And they're, really important as we scale that company. But like the context around that conversation was more around when we started Harbor, which is the new thing, or even started a new company, that's 2 or 3 or 4 people in a room just banging it out and trying to figure things out. I mean, there's methodologies around that, but you don't want to Scrumly, you want as little management as possible, as little oversight as possible. And you want developers and team members who can do anything. Your business person needs to be able to do sales and marketing and website development and partnerships and everything. And your developer needs to be able to spin up servers and do hardware and firmware and software and mobile apps and everything, right? So I'd much rather have a team of 3 or 4 people that are just willing to figure things out and try it and iterate than trying to build the perfect system. For us, it's just about how do we get something out there in the field, try it out, iterate on it. It's beautiful when you can do that and you have 1 or 2 or 5 or 10 or 20 customers, and an outage is, you'll get some phone calls, maybe some hate mail. Whole different ball game when you've got, millions of transactions happening on a daily basis, and you need to keep your systems up and you can't have outages. When we push an upgrade, we've got to upgrade 10,000 iPads overnight. Some 10 of those are down. You're not getting any deliveries. You're getting calls into your call center. You have to run an organization very differently. And some of these tools are fantastic for that, but they're not as great when you're trying to build a new product with 3 people. Just need to get it out in the market quick.
Okay. Did that, you can nod, Sama. Did that answer your question? Okay, great. Thanks. Okay, so Justin, you're up.
You mentioned in bringing on the investors and essentially the purchaser being a hands-off organization. And you mentioned that you were wanting to build it yourself and continue the growth and the mission of the company. What variables would have needed to be different for you to decide to essentially aggregate on that international platform and a more involved investor? What were those toggles that would have made that a better idea?
Yeah, I mean, especially I think if they were local, I think that would help. If I'm going to work with someone and we're merging our businesses together, I want them right here sitting next to me. I want to have a very iterative experience where we're working together. I really want to drill into that strategy and make sure that we are aligned. I really need to trust the management and the people that I'm going to be working with there. And, you know, that would be if I was, you know, a lot of times when there's something like that, they're going to ask you to reinvest back into the business. So, okay, we're going to buy your company for $100 million, but we want you to take $20 million and put it back into this entity. And so if you're going to take that risk and that additional level of risk, you know, you really want to make sure that the partner you're working with is someone that you can build a strong relationship with. And that can be very difficult through the acquisition stage where you're, you know, trying to put your best foot forward. You're trying to make everything look great. You're trying to, you know, you're negotiating with the people. It's an interesting dynamic through that time, and you're trying to get to know each other as fast as you can. But you also want the deal to close. And so there's just a lot more risk, I felt, at least in that transaction that we were looking at. You know, our acquirers were international. I was going to be spending all my time on a plane, and you know, was I really going to be running the business and driving things forward versus you know, lots of meetings and talk and other ideas they had for the company than I had. So I think you just really need really great alignment, really great relationship. And something like that might work if you've built a relationship over the years and you trust and know each other really well, right? And then you kind of step into something like that, and maybe you've done some work together, more of an organic acquisition than running like a process like we did, where it was really around how do we get the best value for the company.
Great, thank you.
You guys hear me say oops. Go ahead, Ken.
So when you're in those initial stages of your startups, for both of your startups, what was your process like for getting your initial team formed? Like, did they just kind of conglomerate around the idea and help you along until they just become kind of christened as part of the team? Or was it more of you actually sought them out, you found that they actually had what you were looking for, and you just kind of pulled them in?
Yeah, so I mean, I've built, I guess you could call it like 4 or 5 different companies. The first one I built, Laundry Rock, when I started it, a developer that was working for me at the company that I was working at, I kind of hired him on the side to build the product for me. So in every business that I've built, it starts with product, right? You got to build something. There's nothing to sell. So, I mean, you can sit there in rooms and talk, but like, I don't need a bunch of business people in there. I need developers building something. So, you know, I would find a good developer I knew who's kind of a full stack skills and say, hey, you know, here's what I want. I'll draw flow charts and screen designs and data models and such, and design it for them, and then have them just start hacking on it and working with them and building it. And then once I had a product that was pretty close to bring to market, is when you start filling out that team and bringing in more than product people, and the business people and the sales people. I mean, a lot of times, like, you got to be willing to go out there and do the sales. You got to be willing to, you know, maybe you'll find a freelancer to build to do some graphic design for you, but you know, go figure out Squarespace and spend your nights and weekends getting a website up. And so it's amazing how much stuff you can do yourself. And if you're a developer, you can spend your time doing that too. But you know, development takes a lot of time, a lot of heads down, just really cranking it out. And so for me, typically it's me partnering with a developer. They're going to build something. I'm going to build the business side of it, the marketing, the sales channel, go out and start speaking to customers and just keep pushing them to give me something that I can work with. And then once I start getting some traction, pretty much between the two of us, then, you know, start to scale that company a little bit more. And maybe it's 2, 3, 4. It all depends on how much funds you have to get things going. But besides like one business person and developer, you know, I've got an entrepreneur I'm working with right now, and he's still building this product, and he's got a sales team that's out there killing it, bringing in a whole bunch of business. But I'm like, you need to cut these guys off. Like, let's get our product to market and start testing it out. before you start selling the thing, you're putting the cart in front of the horse a little too much. So, that's the way I've built the businesses that I have is just product first with a small team, and then start to backfill into the different areas that you can't cover yourself. One of the best things I did at Luxer One is I hired, I call him a chief of staff, just kind of like my right-hand man. Once I started growing the business side of things. So this was just someone who was really diverse and had a great skill set and could do a bunch of different things and sort of an entrepreneur. And to me, that's really kind of my definition of an entrepreneur, is someone who can just figure anything out quickly and is not afraid to, take customer service calls, take out the garbage, clean the bathroom, and then go on a sales call on the same day, right? So, and then install some lockers too while you're at it. And then, once he's doing 3 or 4 installs a day of lockers and can't do any more, then you hire an installation team. But get out there and do the installs yourself until you can justify having a person that can do that as your sole job, or maybe it's an installer and a customer service rep, and then eventually the customer service calls are too much, so now you hire a customer service team. So very incremental growth.
Yeah, I love that, Arik. I worked for a startup back in 2000 for 5 years, and I remember being out there cleaning the garbage can one day. That wasn't my job, but hey, somebody needed to do it. I mean, it was nobody's job, but you're willing to try and do everything. So Karen has a question. You want to go ahead?
Thank you. Yeah, so with COVID and the Great Resignation and the way businesses are changing, there's a trend now to hire contractors and freelancers rather than FTEs. And I know that's difficult for some certain types of companies or industries, but I'd like to know your opinion about that, especially related to knowledge-based businesses and financial management. And of course, I'm thinking of this in relation to my marketing agency.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of rules and compliance around that, right? So, I mean, those rules and compliance have changed quite a bit over the last few years. So you need to be really careful to make sure that, what you're doing is aligned with compliance. It's also it kind of goes back to what I was saying there of like, hey, I need someone to install lockers, but I only have one install every week. I can do that myself. I can hire somebody who does locker installs and other things, or maybe I can have a contractor who installs, vending machines, go out and install a locker for me here and there. So, for us, a lot of it goes back to, is it big enough and is there enough money in it for me to build up those competencies in-house? Or am I better off using a third party or a consultant to do it, or, a contractor to do it? A lot of this came because of these business models like Uber and DoorDash and those ones where, they're building a massive company that scales around third-party contractors who have flexible schedules. They built a whole interface to do that. I mean, that's not, my business has never been like that. It's much more scalable and incremental. But when we have a specialty thing that nobody in the company knows how to do, and it's something we only need on a limited basis, I mean, that's a fantastic time to bring in a contractor.
Thank you.
All right. I don't see any hands, and I don't see any questions in the chat. I'll do a going, gone. Your last chance to raise your hand and ask a question. All right. It looks like you awed them, Arik, and they're still thinking about those questions. I want to ask you to tell us a little bit more about the EO Accelerator. And I know you mentioned you're looking for people who have like 250,000 to $1 million in annual revenue, right? For that.
Yeah. So EO is an entrepreneur's organization. To be an EO, you need to be the founder and CEO of a company that does at least $1 million in revenue. There's about 75 of us here in Sacramento and growing. And we get together and meet regularly. But a lot of times what happens is We meet people who are great entrepreneurs but don't qualify for EO. They're in the earlier stages of growing their business, and trying to reach out to a more diverse community. So the EO Accelerator, I mean, the term accelerator is probably wrong. It's not like a traditional accelerator. We don't put money in the company. There's no goal of getting funding out of this. It's not, I mean, we have high growth software startups, but a lot of times it's, marketing firms and powder coating shops and web design agencies, good solid businesses that are going to scale and grow. And so, we bring in experienced entrepreneurs. We bring in a very structured program of training based on EOS and scaling up. We have accountability groups where you're partnered with other members, and other EO members come in and coach your group and help you scale your company. So it's very different than most of the accelerators that are out there, and it's more of a tool to help small businesses grow and give them the support they need. I mean, I wish I knew about this when I started my company, because it is very lonely and it's very hard to grow a company, especially from the early stages. And there's nothing better than being surrounded by people who've done it and can help you sort of navigate those waters and be a great network for you, especially in a small town like Sacramento, where people know everybody knows everybody. And so we can make connections for you and really help you scale and grow your business very quickly. So that's been a lot of fun to be part of that, to launch that here in the city.
And if I understand it correctly, you guys take on new folks about once a quarter or so. Is that right? It's not once a year, or is it as they come about?
Yeah, so we have quarterly learning days, which is where we run through. Scaling Up is actually the book. It has like 4 different modules. So it has a people day, a strategy day, an execution day, and a cash day. I'm just looking at the book right here next to me. And so those are the 4 different days. So we bring on new members into one of those learning days, where it's a full day of training with an expert coach that we fly in to come in, and they're certified Scaling Up coaches. Like I said, I did this for my company and spent $5,000 a day for a coach to come out and talk to us. And it's those same coaches who are coming out and spending a day with you on strategy or execution or operations or cash. And so then we had that one, and that's when we onboard new members. So we're always bringing on new groups then. Then you get separated into an accountability group, which is usually generally 4 or 5 of you, similar type challenges that you're focusing, paired with an experienced EO member who's gone through training to be a coach, and really holding you accountable. A lot of it's accountability, putting a plan in place, saying, hey, here's the number you need to hit. How are we going to hit that? What are the pieces that you need to do? How many sales calls you need to make? Did you make those sales calls? You need to do some hiring. What are the different ways that you can do some hiring here? So very tactical business help to really help these companies scale past $1 million, because it depends on your business, but oftentimes once you hit that $1 million mark, I mean, that's when you've got employees. That's when you kind of have a more substantial business that's probably supporting your lifestyle, hopefully starting to support your lifestyle. And that 250 to $1 million can be really tough, and that's what we're here to help people do.
Well, I've heard a lot of great things about EO in Sacramento. I know a lot of the folks who are in EO, and you guys all give back a lot to our entrepreneur community. So if anyone has any questions about that, feel free to reach out to me and I can connect you to the right people in EO. So, or you can search for Entrepreneurs Organization, find the Sacramento chapter, and there's probably some information on their page about how to look into the accelerator. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Arik. We're going to wrap up with a little bit of upcoming events, information, and things of that nature. So I'm gonna let's all give Arik a round of applause for being such a wonderful teacher today, sharing his story with us. I know I learned a lot. So
thank you for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right. So Jeff is gonna take us home here. I'm gonna unspotlight. There we go. Let's see. Whoops.
So just want to again also thank for great insight and experience and sharing your journey there, and great job to Laura for interviewing and some great questions from the audience. So thank you all for coming out to tonight's happy hour.